Age 3 is the culmination of everything that we've learned over the last decade. It's the big blockbuster game, it's got sexy graphics.
It just kind of makes everybody just take a step back and say, wow, this is cool.
There's just such a polish to it. There's such a sense of realism.
It has plot twists, it has different big epic events that happen during the storyline.
Age of Empires 3 basically rocks the house down. It's going to give RTS players specifically something that they've never seen before.
Ensemble's history is RTS's and the Age of Empires franchise. And so, you know, it's such a huge franchise. How do you not do a sequel to it? I mean, everybody's been anticipating and been expecting it for a long time.
Early on, our goal was to be revolutionary. We wanted to try to do some things that we had never done before in a game.
The world we wanted to create for Age of Empires 3 was a world that you could be immersed in, a world that you would want to go in and play in.
What are we going to do that's new and different that we haven't seen before?
You can't just put a simple game out anymore. It's got to be like the best looking, it's got to have the best gameplay, and a lot of people forget, you know, it's got to be fun, and if it's not, you fail.
We didn't really want to go back and do what we had done before, which was the ancient and medieval times. So we're left with the colonial time and World War II. Nobody on the team wanted to do a tank game. Tanks are impersonal. A musketeer gets blown off the cliff by a big cannonball. I see the blood come out. I feel at least some sort of human attachment to that.
We're going 1500 to the 1850s during the discovery of the New World, and it was a time period that really fit.
It's the period that made the modern world, okay? And we've brought it out in a way that is exciting, you know,
with cannons blowing guys off of cliffs.
For instance, exactly.
Historically, this was an amazing time when the Europeans and the natives both discovered whole new continents that existed in their world that were totally unknown.
It's the next great age game. It allows you to conquer the new world. And I think everybody around the world wants to conquer North America. So, especially now.
For the first time, our game is about where I live, and the maps are American maps. I think that's cool. The way we approach our games, they're based on history, but they're not necessarily historical. They're not simulations, they're games. They're meant to be entertaining.
I mean, this is a time period where you have things like slavery and you know, genocide of Native Americans. If we were doing a realistic historical game, those would be big parts of it, but it's not fun. I mean, even if it wasn't offensive to specific people, we don't want a game where you're supposed to feel great about wiping out people. So we, you know, we downplay that. It's a game, it's not a historical product.
Mostly what I learn about history is stuff that I learned from watching movies, Gladiator and Braveheart. I think that's the level of history I like to portray personally.
We kind of just take all the cool things from history and then just try to make a fun game out of it.
Research definitely has a role, but we're not tied to it.
That's the uniform that the Maryland Militia Artillery would have had.
Well, there's a couple of kinds of research that goes on. One is like, let's take field trips out to the Smithsonian or to Gettysburg to kind of immerse ourselves in the trappings of the time.
One of the guys here used to be a Gettysburg reenactor himself, and so he knew that there was a big anniversary reenactment coming up.
All right, cool.
It was a very large-scale event that happened, and we got to see just massive amounts of tents and formations and time period weapons.
I was able to get quite a few sounds that actually wound up in the game. The mortars, a lot of the artillery, even the muskets, their original source came from the real stuff on the Gettysburg field.
It was a very hot environment that we were out in, and the fields were dry. It was in the middle of summer.
Someone shot something that caught on fire. You can imagine a field full of people sort of halfway looking over to see, you know, if everything was all right.
They were not intending to start a fire and scare the rebels away or anything. And it was definitely something that I don't think was anticipated.
We all thought that we were going to incinerate.
Most of the real research that goes on is book reading.
Sandy, he's a real character. He's always reading a book. He's got more information than he knows what to do with. You can send out some odd email about something, and he'll reply 15 minutes later with the whole history of it. Like, oh yeah, and then just like, down this list of just everything. Oh yeah, he's just insane. He's like a walking dictionary. It's awesome.
I think there are a lot of stereotypes about game developers in the outside world. I think we read a review today talking about game developers as these kind of pasty people stuck in a dark office.
There are some of those types, but in general, we're all pretty normal people.
The stereotype is the guy with no social skills, but he's a genius on the computer. We have a lot of that. In fact, I was the president of my high school computer club, and I was the most social person in there, and probably one of the least social persons in my school anyway. So I went to the top of the social chain in the computer club. So
our fearless leader returns.
I've always really liked geeks. I've been a geek all my life, and I think geeks are great. We wear our hearts on our sleeves. Don't have the social skills to know, when not to speak. We just say what we like.
And he's sitting there with the veil. We're standing there, DL, instead of just taking his shirt off, takes everything off. And so you're standing there next to the DL, and you're like, maybe I'll go. Zach can't find his clothes. The first thing he does is start walking towards you. He doesn't see his clothes, so now you have a naked DL chasing you around.
That's been seared from my memory.
No, it's not. We told it at lunch, dude.
I think Tony has worked really hard to build a culture here that's, I think he would like it to be a fraternity house if he could, but we have to be a little more professional than that.
I think running a company is it's all about having really good friends, It's like, I like to run the company that way. So my idea is really like just to create a fertile soil for creativity and put the right people in the right places and then see what happens.
Oh, no way. Oh, man. It's my turn now.
We do a lot of things outside of work or these extracurricular things. We've got a volleyball group, we've got a poker group.
Oh, this sucks. No.
Just ready to stay in. Determination on other things that you desire.
And I think we enjoy each other's company. I think that's one of the reasons why we're so successful being professional.
I had 3 aces.
Who's got a 10?
Yeah, we're all hardcore gamers here. We all love what we do.
That's pathetic.
There's people that play flag football.
It's a very close-knit company as far as doing things both in work and outside of work.
I'm getting him.
We actually do like each other, and we're not just coming in every day doing our job. We actually enjoy working with these people.
When you get hired here, the whole company has to vote on you, and so it's 70 people, and if one of them has a major problem that's valid, then you won't get hired.
We always, when we're hiring people, we look for like the elevator test, which is if I got stuck in the elevator with this guy, would I have enough to talk about with him, or would I just kind of be tapping my feet waiting for the doors to open?
Sorry to do this to you, Sandy. I gotta kill that one.
When I was at a different development studio, our days were basically looking forward to playing Age of Empires. And then the 2 hours after we played it at lunch, we'd just be talking about it. I think Age 3 is going to separate itself from a lot of the other games out there because of specifically with the art.
Someone will come down the hall and show me a picture they made, and I'll just be, God, this guy is so great. This is amazing. I'm constantly reminded that, God, I am the dumbest person in this company, and I could never do any of this stuff. So that's nice to know that all these people created job security for me. So
We try and keep our skills up as much as we can. So here we try to do stuff where the artists will get together on a weekly basis.
If you don't keep your skills practiced up outside of work, then they sort of deteriorate. We have life drawing on a regular basis, so the artists can keep their hand skills up to par and or learn new techniques. I don't know any other studios that have that sort of accessibility.
One thing that we did for the collector's edition was create an art of book. It's got all of the artwork leading up to our current game, Age of Empires 3. It's got a little bit of Age 1 and 2.
We wanted a coffee table book that was just like, not a lot of text, just lots of pictures, lots of color.
It's not for gamers only. It's a book that basically anybody can open up, look at, and appreciate the artwork.
There are a lot of artists in this company, and not all of them are in the art department. I work pretty closely with the artists a lot when I'm working on in-game cinematics, which we call IGCs. Doing these IGCs is kind of like making moving screenshots. You want everything to look as beautiful as it can. One of the best things about being one of the only girls in a company full of guys is that I don't have to share the bathroom with anybody. I like to see guys spar with one another.
Larry, if you rush one more time before we're ready, this is gonna be it.
You're a wuss, dude. Okay, go for it then.
Oh, he-man!
Sometimes I take part, but mostly they try to mind their P's and Q's around me.
The women we do have do a really good job at balancing our culture. And they serve, aside from their intellects and their talent and creativity, they do add a certain balance to the company that's necessary.
I think our game is really fantastic, and I know a lot of my friends who are also women love the game too.
Obviously, we wanted to sell 1 billion copies, and that's all to be treated like geniuses, right? But way more important to us is that the people we respect tell us, "Wow, that was an awesome game you did." You know, and I like my kids are going to play it. I want them to play it for a long time and say, "Good game, Dad."
Since games have very passionate followers, typically a group of those will decide that they want to be super followers. They want to really engage the other players of the game as well as the developers and the publishers. So they'll create an internet site and they'll put information out there. They'll have contests. They'll have forums where people can interact. They invite the developers to participate, and really it's a way for ourselves to be closer to our customer base.
A lot of companies are starting to kind of experiment with what gameplay is, what video games are, which I think is great because there are a lot of companies that take safe bets and work on things that everybody has done before.
I guess the challenge nowadays is to not sit on your laurels.
One of the rules that we have in Ensemble is the developer can't have more fun than the player. You know, I could have a lot more fun with AI that was fun to write, that wasn't necessarily so much fun to play.
I think the secret, in my view, is creating what we call interesting decisions, a series of interesting decisions. So that you make a decision, that opens up the door to a couple more, you take one of those, and that opens up more to more, and next thing you know, lots of time has passed, you're very entertained, you don't maybe think of it as entertained, but you're just totally and mentally engaged.
As you play the game, you're going to notice things that are just subtle. You'll see the water and how realistic that looks.
If I was to pick any one single thing that I'm probably most happy with in Age 3, it's the graphics.
The graphics are just phenomenal. I say that immediately straight away because that's the thing that really smacks you in the face.
Age of Empires 3 uses a brand new physics system called Havoc to simulate many things like building destruction.
Each civilization has a set of buildings, houses and town centers and barracks and stables and whatnot. And every one of those buildings need to blow up naturally, so they could blow up when cannonballs hit them.
Lighting was one of the issues that we really took seriously. We looked at how ILM, for example, does their tone mapping, and we tried to emulate that in our shaders. It gives us a higher dynamic range as far as the lighting is concerned.
We use an iterative process where I call it design by playing. We play it, test it, adjust it.
Everybody in the company, every week, they play test the game at least once.
Everybody is required to play test. Playtesting is something that we take very seriously.
What's wrong? My cows aren't getting fat fast enough.
And we call playtest, and you have to run out of your office to go to the playtest area to get a seat.
We have 16 machines in here, and there'll be 16 people in here Monday through Friday, starting at 4 o'clock.
You wouldn't have a dude running around with a gas light.
It's static.
Combat seems really unresponsive.
Yeah.
I can't figure out why the Russians are so far behind.
We probably had enough features in this game at one time to make 10 or 11 different kind of games. We just kept wanting to try different features to see if we could take old systems and make them fun in different ways. So we tried hundreds and hundreds of different ideas. Very few of them worked. We had Secrets of the New World. These were like, you would find the Fountain of Youth or the 7 Cities of Gold or something like that. It just felt too magical. We'd done something similar in Age of Mythology, and we knew it was a cool vibe that we wanted to capture, but that didn't work. We used to have early fighting in the game. You'd start with an army, you'd run around and immediately beat on the other player in the first 30 seconds of the game, but it really sucked to lose your army and all your dudes within a minute of starting the game. So got rid of that too. There's probably 1,000 of these things that we tried and failed.
We're setting up for a usability test. That's when we bring in people from outside and let them play the game. We watch them on the monitors and through the two-way mirror that's behind me. We bring in friends, people we meet in Best Buy, people who just call me up and say that they want to test. We find people from all over.
I'm just confused about this town center. Trying to figure out.
I was a little confused at first, and I guess she said that was a good thing.
Has he clicked on the town center yet? The real one?
Yeah, he built villagers.
It's frustrating. Part of the designer's job is to take feedback from people. Almost always that feedback is bad.
The AI beat him. He was playing on a moderate difficulty level, and I think he was a little surprised to lose, but he did good.
One of the things, they were doing user feedback, and they saw a picture of a samurai, and everybody just got really excited, and so they told me to spend as much time as I wanted on that one unit just to make it as cool as possible.
I had a number of missions, and one of them was to do the several home city buildings. And I'd say about the third one that I worked on was a harbor. And on the front of it, fairly sizable, the name of the harbor was Jake's Harbor, which happens to be my son's name. And I put it in there, it looked like it was, just hand painted, weathered, chipped and everything else. And it didn't quite get under the big art chief's radar. And he said that it looked a little bit too modern, a little bit too marketing-like or whatever. So I had to alter it up a little bit and stuff, but it's still in there somewhere. So, yeah.
I'm not aware of any secret things in the game, but that's usually the province of our artists, because they're the ones making the objects, the things you see, and they can sneak little things in there. Well, we won't know about many of those, or any of those, maybe until after the game's published. I can give you an example. Like in Age 1, we had this unit called the Catapult that walked around in the big arm and threw rocks. And I didn't know this till years later, that they had license plates on the back of them. So here's an ancient, Assyrian or object from 3,000 years ago and had a license plate on the back. You couldn't see it until it was driving away from you, but little things like that. I mean, it wouldn't be unusual to see a hot rod pop up in Age of Empires 3 if you hit the right buttons, or a motorcycle or something like that. One of our artists has a Humvee now. Maybe there'll be a Humvee in the game.
When we very first started talking about doing Age of Empires 3, it just seemed to kind of want a big orchestral score, and that's something that we haven't done for a full game before. It was a challenge to even make the decision. Let's commit ourselves to doing this, big chunk of work like this. But it's what the game wanted to hear.
Music is very personal. Creating it and being a part of it, and attaching that to a product is a challenge.
The process generally starts with sitting at the keyboard and, with this tape recorder, sketching out ideas. Scoring for a game is different than working on something like TV or movies, because you don't know what the timeline is going to be. In a movie or a television show, you have a point A and a point B, and it's going to be a linear path to get there. With a game, who knows what the player is going to do.
We recorded in Studio X, which is a well-known studio in downtown Seattle.
In my job, there's nothing better than that day in the studio, sitting down and hearing all of those great players knock out the piece of music that I did on this little tape recorder.
E3 is always a great event for video games in general. I mean, it's the latest and greatest stuff that's coming out that year.
E3 was very exciting because we spent a good month preparing just for E3 and polishing the game and making the user interface look good and just tying things off in order to present the game.
E3 is a big pain in the ass. It's a sort of a necessary evil in the game industry. We have to go, we have to show our game. There's buyers there, we got to get them excited about it, so that they put the game on their shelves. We have to get the press excited about it, so they write good reviews, so that people read them, so they go buy the game at the retailers. But mostly it's just a big pain in the ass. It comes at like the worst possible time. We have to stop everything that we're doing, shut the project down for weeks. We have a huge fan base. We certainly want those customers to come buy our game.
It's just amazing. The cannonballs flying, the people flying, people falling to the water. I never saw that on a strategy game. It looks like a shooter, but it's a strategy game, so I'm amazed.
Totally awesome. It's a huge improvement over the last Age games that I've played.
No, I think this one I will try again because it's astonishing.
yes, and the water. The water's lovely.
I've wasted so many hours playing this game. It keeps me up till way past midnight, and this is going to do a lot of damage to my home life.
It's a lot of work. It tends to be a lot of fun too. You know, after hours, everybody goes out to a restaurant.
This is my favorite part of the project, when we actually get to really show people what we've been doing for a couple years.
We were kind of back in a corner, but people were coming out to see us. They were really, I mean, there was a lot of people packed into that small space.
The feedback from the sessions have been great. We've been talking to media, we're talking to buyers. They all love it.
I think the biggest question was, when's it coming out?
I get more reactions from people just like as I'm walking around the show, they see the shirt and they're like, where can I find Age of Empires 3?
There'll be a bigger PR campaign kind of kick off from this point up until ship. It's been mostly kind of educating the press right now on the game, what we're doing, and then from here on out we'll start lining up for the previews of the game, and then there'll be some other press events. Age 3 is a huge game overseas. About 50% of our sales are outside of the US, so it's important that we get the game in front of all of our customers overseas.
Marketing is a huge part of making a game in this day and age. The industry is a very competitive place now. It's grown dramatically, and so you really have to get the word out. You have to have ads. You see games on TV now and on movie trailers.
The whole company is kind of in this, like, getting ready to ship it mode.
We had a team up in Redmond do a code analysis on our code base last week, and they entered 1,700 bugs. We have a lot of bugs to fix. So just getting through that mountain of stuff, certainly keeps me awake at night.
If I take all my units and go up to him and go to his fort, all he has to do is hit one button, the Minutemen pop out, and then he crushes my army. And it's broken. It's clearly broken. I've sent 1 million emails doing that.
Crunch time in the industry is a kind of a period where you get together and you're focused on the game in very specific amounts of time.
We've got a lot of bugs to fix or a lot of features to put in before we hit a milestone.
We've gone full circle. We tried to eliminate crunch altogether, and that was actually no good because then we didn't get anything done. We found that crunch is a very important focal point for everybody coming together.
The UI is faded in anyway.
Well, no, I want to make sure that we're actually clipping at the bottom of the screen here, otherwise we're not getting any different.
Oh, you're right, that whole 140 nanoseconds per update.
I mean, we're excited. It's getting close to the end. We know what the box is going to look like now. We know kind of what the marketing campaign is going to look like. We're planning the release party already, assuming nothing goes wrong. It's been a really long journey. It's exciting. It's cool.
This place, all through its history, has been interested in nothing but leading the way.
It's just fun to make games. I mean, that's just like the best.